Hello.
Hi there, JS. Welcome to the show. And tonight we have the guest JS Garrett, a magician, occultist. So, hi, how is it out there in America?
Oh, it's nice and rainy and cold here, actually, but I do love this weather, so it's all good.
Oh, that's good. It just been to work?
Do what?
Just been to work?
Yeah, I work pretty much all day, every day and night. Like when you work for yourself, you're always doing something for your business. But when you love what you do, it's more of just like a full-time hobby that you enjoy doing. So it's great.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. So tonight we're just going to discuss, talk about summoning Lucifer and who Lucifer is and what's going on there with him.
Okay. Well, that ought to be an interesting chat.
Yes, it's an entity that everyone finds interesting. I talked about it with Brian Barrett just earlier as well, and then we got on to talking about the metaverse, which was interesting. I noticed that when you were talking to your co-host with red hair, he brought up another entity called Belial that I hadn't heard of before.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah, Belial, that's the first entity that I ever made contact with as far as myself initiating contact. Like that was my very first evocation, and that's really when things started to change and take off for me. It took me like 3 days to summon him because I didn't really know what I was doing. Like I didn't know how to do a proper evocation, and I'd never done one before. I had been contacted by entities like Shimyaza, but I'd never attempted to initiate that contact before Belial. And I I essentially made a verbal pact with him, and that is it came to fruition the very next day within 24 hours, and I'm still working my end of that deal.
Oh, right. So, what made you choose him?
Well, I was facing charges that were unjust. I think I mentioned it before. My family and I, my wife and three small children, were attacked by four meth addicts at a private swimming pool, and I had to utilize deadly force in order to save my family and get us out of there in one piece. Well, there's no self-defense law here in Georgia, so if you use deadly force, then you get arrested and you go to trial, and the jury sorts it out.
Oh, is that what happened
So
to you?
yes, that's exactly what happened to me.
Oh.
So when the police got there, they arrested me and charged me with 4 counts of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. All right, which carries like 20 years apiece, and on top of like assault charges, I was facing up to 85 years to life in prison.
Wow.
So
Can I just ask, was it a shooter or something else?
no, I did not have to shoot anybody, but I did have to pull a gun on these people to get them off of my wife. And it came very close to that. Thankfully, I didn't have to pull the trigger, and they backed off, and I got my family in the truck and we left. But just brandishing a firearm is considered aggravated assault. And so just pointing a gun at somebody is aggravated assault, at least in the state that I'm in. So you don't have a legal right to defend yourself here. So like I said, when the police got there, they arrested me.
And then what happened? So you'd already, I don't, did you start going to evocations with Eric to start with, or that happened after?
That happened after.
Right.
All right, so they arrested me, and I spent like 48 hours in jail, and then bonded out, and I was facing these charges for several years. Like
Oh.
it just kept on, dragging out to the point where I lost everything. Like I lost all my finances and liquidated all my resources. Lost my house, lost my cars. Like I was totally at rock bottom. And so I started. I felt like I was totally screwed, and I was. I ran out of money, so I was going to be representing myself when it went to trial, which is a certain guilty verdict. And so I started researching what type of entity could help me with this, with the legal problems. And so I came across one of E.A. Koetting's YouTube videos, and he had mentioned that Belial was like the ideal spirit to summon to help you with legal issues. So I memorized his conjuration and an incantation to initiate spiritual pacts, and I began repeating that over and over and over. Anytime I was alone, like driving down the road, sitting at work, in the shower, laying in bed at night. And every time I would repeat this conjuration, I'd feel like tingles. Like he's getting a little bit closer, a little bit closer. I'm like, if I keep knocking, he's going to answer me. And so I did this for 3 days. And on the third day, he actually answered me. And it was unlike anything I'd experienced to that point. It was the first time I saw like a physical manifestation of an entity and had clear communication, as in he was talking to me and I could hear him in my head. And he asked me what did I want? He's like, why'd you summon me? And he starts laughing. I can literally hear him laughing, like he already knew everything. And so, I said, that I wanted the charges against me dropped, and he's like, okay, what else? I'm like, well, I want to become, the term I used at the time was master, even though I don't think there is such a thing. But I said, I want to become a master black magician, and I want to learn the black arts directly from you yourself. And that's what he wanted to hear. So we made the deal, and he gave me instructions on what to do next, which was crazy. And then 24 hours later, I got a call from my lawyer telling me that the DA was dropping my charges, so that he thought the police arrested the wrong person, and that the so-called witnesses were scumbags, the victims, and that they had recently been arrested for doing the exact same thing to another couple. Only that couple didn't have a gun, so that woman is still in a coma. All right, like
Wow.
they beat a poor woman into a coma, and those people that attacked us are rotting in prison right now.
Well, that's excellent, isn't it? And what did Belial look? I mean, I don't know much about him. Can you tell us about what kind, where he comes from? And
Well, I mean, there's so much different lore about Belial. I believe that he's an ancient god. Like he's what I consider to be the Lord of the earth and the Lord of beasts, or Lord of beasts in the earth. Now he's in Christian lore, he's in Muslim lore, he's in pretty much all the lore in one form or another. The Christians call him a fallen angel, claim that he was the first angel to fall before Lucifer, and that he had literally started the war in the heavens, started the rebellion. And King Sol, like if you read the Keys of Solomon, they mention Belial as being a jinn, saying that Belial was one of the 72 jinn that Solomon supposedly trapped in this brass vessel. All right, and so he's described as a jinn there. And when you go further and further back, like to the Phoenicians and societies like that, you find him, and he's considered a god. So I like to go back to the oldest history that I can find, because that's probably going to be the most accurate. And so I finally just summoned him and asked him, like, what are you? You a fallen angel? You a jinn? What? And he's like, I'm a god. What are you talking about? And I'm like, okay, hail Belial, I believe you.
and what did he look like? A
All
man?
right. Well, whenever he appeared to me, it was actually in the form of light. I was standing in my driveway. I was on the phone with my brother at the time. I wasn't even speaking the chant at the time, and I felt like this crazy, insane energy come through the top of my head and just fill my entire body. It was like slowly absorbing a lightning bolt through the top of my head, and I'm staring at a street light that I can see like through the trees. Like there's some woods here, and then there's a street light behind it, and that light literally expanded and became huge and golden, like this gold light, and it started swirling, and it took the form of a man's head with a crown. And then it took the form of three different animals. One looked like a female lioness, the other one looked like a horse, and then the other one looked like an owl. And then it took the man's head's form again, and that's when he started talking to me. So he didn't like poof in front of me like a genie or like Darth Vader on a hologram. It was more like a vivid hallucination, almost like a burning bush, kind of
Hmm.
ironically, staring at this light at night through the trees that like expands and gets really bright, and it looked like golden fire, taking these different forms. So that's how he appeared to me.
So he was like a bit of a shapeshifter.
Well, yeah, I mean they're all shapeshifters. They can take any form they want to take. They can look really beautiful. They can look really scary. They typically, appear to you in the form that you need to see them in, I think.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Yeah. When you're talking about like jinn, angels, demons, they can take whatever form they want to take.
Hmm. And What do you mean? You mean they tap into the person and think, oh, what would be best to appear to them as, and what would they
Quite
most?
possibly. I mean, maybe they appear. Some people think that they appear to us how we expect to see them. Others think that they appear how they want to be seen by us. And so I think it just depends on why they're appearing to you. And we're very visual creatures. So I mean, if you actually see something like that, like if you actually see something materialize, that's like the holy cow moment. Like, oh my God, this stuff is all real. It usually scares people to death. Like I've had people literally take off running from my rituals, like first time evocations. Like I've had people like literally get up and take off running. Like it scares them that bad. So you know you have to be ready for what you're asking for, and that includes having some guts. It's like, do you think these things are real, or are you just playing around? Because when you see one of them manifest, then there's no doubt that it's real. And I think that the people who are semi undecided, that's like the earth shattering experience for them, is the first time they either see something or the first time one of them actually reaches out and grabs a hold of you. If you, that's a whole different thing. You feel an invisible hand reach out and grab a hold of you, that's really going to shatter your world or
Hmm.
rattle it.
And do you think now, after experiencing him, that he might be a jinn?
I mean, that's, I'm going to say that he's an ancient god.
Hmm.
Now, I know, like with talking to Brian, he's of the mindset that everything is jinn. Angels, demons,
Yeah.
yeah, all of it's jinn, which, jinn might be like a general term in some cultures to
Yes.
describe anything supernatural.
Yes.
But no, I think, there's definitely different classes of jinn and spirits, at least categories that we try to put them in according to what we know about them. But the truth is, we don't know anything about
That's
them other
true.
than what they tell us. Okay, we're all trying to figure this out. Like we are like ants on an anthill compared to an entity or being such as this. So we try to describe them and understand them in the best way that we can. I'm more concerned with how to work with them and build a relationship with them than
Hmm.
putting a label on them.
So what went on then, after he helped you in that way? What, I mean, did you think, well, I just want to have a relationship with you. I'd just like it if you appeared to me every day and we could be buddies. And did you have that mindset?
No, I actually underwent full on possession with him for a period of like 9 months. All right, so like full perfect possession is where you co-inhabit your body and mind and share it with this entity. And you can do things under perfect possession that no normal human can do. Like the type of things that you see David Blaine doing, like stabbing himself through the arm with a skewer and not bleeding. I actually did that. It wasn't like a large skewer. It was like a large needle that I sharpened and stuck it through my forearm. And it was because he told me to. Like all right. So the first sacrificial rite that I did with Belial, I found this crystal the day of the ritual. Like I saw it in a creek, like in a stream, and it was like sparkling, like looked like a piece of gold sitting there sparkling in the sunlight. And so I like wade out in the creek and pick it up, and it's this little quartz crystal. And I hear him in my head, and he says, "Use that." And I'm like, what do you mean use that? And so I got this image of me putting that crystal into a bowl with his sigil and then spilling the sacrificial blood on top of the crystal and then pulling it out and keeping it. All right. So when I did this, it essentially fused that crystal with his energy that then I could have a permanent energetic link to him. And I still carry that crystal in my pocket to this day. So I underwent full on possession with him the first night that I summoned him. I could stab myself and not bleed. I could stick my hand into a beehive and not get stung. I could drink a whole bottle of tequila and not get a buzz. And don't even get me started on the physical abilities in the bedroom, like mind blowing things that you wouldn't imagine are possible. So it was pretty incredible for the first 6 months. And each day it was like a boot camp with him. He was teaching me how to do magic, how to do his own personal brand of magic. Like no books, no other influence, just doing exactly what he showed me to do. And it worked. It worked every time, and it still does. And so, I was in 6 months of bliss, like just pure bliss, physical bliss, mental bliss, tons of energy. I didn't have to sleep if I didn't want to. Like it was incredible, and the most euphoric thing I've ever experienced. Like no drug could compare to being possessed by an entity like Belial, if it is a perfect possession, a mutual possession. And so after that, it was time to destroy me. Right? It's like, all right, I taught you how to do my brand of sorcery. Now you're going to experience the magician's death, also known as the shaman's death. All right. I did not know what that was, and it was the most horrifying thing that I've ever been through in my life. Like, like first of all, I was stricken with anxiety, and all of the essential, like the power that I gained from that was taken from me and drained from me. And so I was broken down emotionally and mentally and physically. And I could literally feel like laying in bed at night, feel like my organs were being cut out of my body. Like the most horrifying thing you can imagine, like an invisible sword cutting you open and ripping your heart out, things like that, or feeling like your limbs are being severed or your head is being severed. Like it's insane. Like any normal person would have been howling to the nut house when this happened. But I knew that, and believe me, I wanted to go to the nut house. I wanted to do anything I could to escape this and make it stop. But there was no escaping it. And I knew if I went to the loony bin, then I would be stuck in that state forever. I knew it was do or die. I'm either going to make it through this, or I'm literally going to die. And I almost did, but I made it through it. I made it through it. And once I was completely broken down, at this point I'm terrified of Belial. All right, at this point I'm scared to death, like more fear than I've ever experienced in my life. And I've stared down the barrel of a gun, and it was nowhere near this scary. All right, and he could move my body against my will if he wanted to. And he would prove that on a regular basis. And so I was like, oh my God, this thing has tricked me. I'm totally screwed. Like I'd be better off if I'd have went to prison, like what have I done? There's no getting out of this. Like I'm doomed. And and then he finally spoke to me again, and by this time it had been 3 months. And I'm standing at the kitchen sink looking out the window, and I'm staring down this long driveway, winding driveway that just goes into the darkness. And he says, "Come out here and face me." And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, well, at that point, believe me, I was more terrified than I've ever been. And that's the last thing I want to do is walk out to the end of that dark driveway and be face to face with him at that point. But I had no choice. There was no getting away from him. And so I do it. I kissed my wife goodbye and figured that I was going out to die. And I walked down to the end of this driveway into the darkness, and I just threw my arms up. I was like, okay, here I am. I'm ready, thinking that I was going to be slaughtered. And I could see this like phantom type, this large shadow like flying around in circles around me. And then it came up behind me, and I felt like these two gigantic hands grabbed me by my rib cage and sank its claws into me. Like it was extremely painful. And my knees just buckled, but I didn't fall on the ground. It's like this thing like held me up when my knees buckled. And I'm like, man, this is the most terrifying thing I've ever been through. Like I was like a scared little baby. And so then he tells me that I owe him a sacrifice. I'm like, are you going to kill me or what? He's like, no, but I won't help you until you square up. You owe me a sacrifice. And he tells me to go to this mountaintop and sacrifice a rooster to him, which, believe me, was the last thing I wanted to do. All right, like at this point, I'm terrified of magic. I'm terrified of him. I'm terrified of any of it. And so, but I do it anyway. All right, so I go out and buy a rooster. I load up everything I needed in my truck. I took my cat with me so that I wouldn't die alone. As pathetic and pitiful as that sounds, coming from a grown man. I kissed my wife and kid goodbye again, not knowing if I was going to come back. And I drove up to this mountaintop in the dark, set up a circle, called him forth, and sacrificed a rooster to him. All right, now, as soon as I did that, I felt this pounding in my chest. Whereas before, when all this torment started, it felt like I had a giant open wound in my chest, like a huge bleeding wound, and it was just constant pain right there. And it was like all the freaking like pain and suffering and anxiety and turmoil I'd suffered through my whole life was just bleeding out of me constantly. And I was feeling like an intensified version of those emotions while I was being purged of that. And so as soon as I make the sacrifice, I feel like a hammer hits me in the chest 3 times, and then it got really hot. Like it felt like a hot poker on my chest. And then all the torment stopped. All the pain and suffering stopped instantly, right then and there. I wasn't normal again. I was a beaten down, broken, bloody sponge of the man that I once was. And then after they broke me down completely, they started putting me back together. And once I went through that process of transformation, I was no longer the person that I used to be. And I've never been the same since. I would never want to go through something like that again if I didn't have to, but I'm glad that I did it, and I'm glad that I made it because that made me the practitioner that I am today.
So what were you like before? I mean, how, in what ways are you different now?
Well, I was arrogant, I was cocky, I had a big ego, um, and I was an asshole. To put it bluntly, I I suffered like a really terrible childhood, so I didn't have a lot of empathy either. I was not a bad person, but I'm not like, I look back and I'm not proud of the person that I was before. And it took me being broken down and destroyed in order to break my ego to the point where I could actually evolve and become a better man. And through becoming a better man, I became the best magician that I can possibly be. And I'm forever still working towards that and doing the work that Belial has for me to do.
So it was a good thing this happened?
Yes, it was a good thing. It was an excruciatingly painful thing, but it was a good thing.
Hmm. And doesn't it make you wary of him? I mean, that story really, I find, this kind of thing interesting, and I don't find it scary, but that I felt was scary. I could feel that. I could feel the
Yep.
reality of it as you were telling the story. And bloody hell, I mean, so what's your relationship like with him now?
Great. He's like a father to me.
Really?
Yeah. I absolutely love him. And it's tough love coming from him, but it is love. And yeah, that was scary. And that's not the experience that everyone else has with him. But you got to consider what you ask for when you go to these entities. So if you ask them to forge you into a master sorcerer, then you are going to have to literally be destroyed and then reassembled. And if you run the other direction during that destruction period, then you will stay stuck in that state for the rest of your life and eventually die in turmoil and misery. So you better be ready to chew what you bite off. You can summon these entities and ask them for help and give them something in exchange and be just fine. But if you ask them to forge you into something different, then you are going to have to fill the shoes that you have commissioned the cobbler to build for you. It's not, you got to do your part too. And this is like Belial is about like spiritual alchemy, like transformation, literally transforming your DNA, like activating dormant DNA. All this DNA that they call junk DNA is not junk DNA. That's stuff that we are genetically programmed and cut off from not to use. If you could theoretically activate all of that junk DNA, then you could become something more than human, I guess, or at least reach the full potential that we humans have to reach. And that's something I'm still working on. I'm not like at the end of my road by any means. And I still get ran through the ringer from time to time. And I just bite down and I know like this is something I've got to make it through and I'll be glad once I'm on the other side of it. But I will never turn and run the other direction because that is the wrong answer.
So why do we have this junk DNA?
Well, I mean, I think it's an essential part. of who we are as creatures. I think our DNA has been pissed in essentially by whatever alien species took over this planet millennia ago. You know, they destroyed our pineal gland. They've genetically altered us to be more submissive and controllable and to be cut off from the power that humans used to have. Like, I think humans, that our ancestors that built the pyramids were extremely powerful, advanced, evolved people. And I think at some point this planet was conquered and we have been degraded, downgraded as a human race to these vile, submissive, petty, stupid creatures. And
You're right, yeah.
I think,
who do you think did that? I mean, what kind of creatures are
oh well,
they?
you know, they call it, you know, there's different names for it. They call them the archons, the greys, the demiurge. You know, like there's all these different theories about who and what it is. But I mean, we're talking about either an alien race from the stars or a race from another dimension that has totally taken over our reality and essentially uses us as food, entertainment, and slave labor. That's what I think.
Why is it some people, I agree with you, why is it some people have like good lives, you know, like celebrities and the rich and the elite, they're sort of having a nice time, whereas the rest of us are pecking around in there. And why is that? Are they part of them or something?
I mean, the elites that rule the world, you know, they can make your life really good or really bad. You know, if you're a commoner, then you're going to be, you know, living in a type of indentured servitude to your government. You know, if you're a celebrity, then you might have it a little bit better, but they're still slaves. They still kill them off whenever it suits them, and they're forced into prostitution and everything else. So they don't really have it better. They have wealth and fame, but they are still slaves.
Oh, right. And it's changing right now, isn't it? There's some weird, big, huge thing going on. What do you
Yeah,
think?
we've been like in a crazy state of change transition, you know, since 2008, really, I think. Like that's, you know, that's when the market crashed and things started getting really crazy. Or since the Trade Center, really. I mean, that's really where it started.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it's all planned and calculated. I mean, there's a dozen documentaries and you know, I'm not a conspiracy theorist or anything like that. I'm a realist. I look at something, I'm like, okay, that's what that is. That's what it looks like. You know, that's probably what it is. But you know, like I think all the tyranny on this planet is man-made, and it might be influenced by another race that rules mankind. But you know, the 1%, they work directly for whatever that influence is,
Hmm.
and you know, in that sense, they're slaves too. But they have it the best. They have all the wealth, they have all the freedom, and they've been running us common folks through a meat grinder for centuries. And in order for that to change, I have no idea what would actually have to happen. You know, like we can enlighten and empower each other on an individual level and, you know, collectively work to make this a better reality for the people that come behind us. But I mean, what would really have to happen for the power structure to no longer enslave the people? Like you got to consider like that's going to be major. And I don't know if it's our lifetime, but I know eventually it's going to happen. You know, nothing lasts forever, and civilizations rise and fall. And it seems like every so many years, the human race, you know, the planet gets blasted back to the Stone Age, and we like start all over, inventing the wheel again. You know, but we leave behind these remnants of ancient civilizations, like you know, like the pyramids and Chichen Itza, Pumapunku, like all these things that we can't figure out how the ancients built and the amount of technology that they had in order to build those things. So it's like the human race has amnesia.
Hmm.
Like every so often there's a cataclysm, and you know the few survivors, you know, have to start all over back in the Stone Age.
Hmm. Hmm. What does Belial say about us? I mean, does he like us? Does he think the human race is a good thing, or does he like, you know, people how it's written in the books that the fallen angels want rid of us?
You know, I absolutely think that you know what they call the fallen angels are 100% on the side of humanity. I think Belial is on our side and wants to see us evolve as a species and be liberated as a species. And it says when the Watchers came here, they looked upon us and realized that we were slaves, that we were like the beasts of the field, and they took pity on us. So they decided to teach us things. They taught us, technology, how to make swords, how to learn how to do magic, how to build civilizations. They wanted to build us up as a species because the tyranny they were battling was the same tyranny enslaving humankind. All right, and so that's why they're so demonized, because they gave us all this knowledge, taught us how to stick up for ourselves and fend for ourselves. And that's why, in the lore it says that they were punished. Whenever the alien overlords came to, destroy the Watchers, that they, re-enslaved mankind. They shortened our life span to 120 years by altering our DNA again. So supposedly humans used to live for hundreds of years, like freaking, Moses, what was he, lived to like 600, Methuselah like 900, the Sumerian kings list. You got kings on that list that ruled for 40,000 years. Now, how is that possible?
Yeah, and of course at the moment, all the Maxines that are going on and people having to do that. I
Yeah,
think
we're
that's
lucky
a
to make it to
DNA.
60. That's only halfway through our lifespan. The human body, as it is now, is engineered to live for 120 years.
Mm.
All right. Now, we're old and decrepit by the time we hit 60 and dying of some type of horrible illness. Now, you can blame that on the toxins in the food and the water and the atmosphere, the vaccines. It's a combination of all of it.
Yes, exactly. So if you look at, say, Lucifer and Belial, which one did you prefer working with?
Both of them. I mean, Belial is where it started for me. Like, that's definitely the main one that I work with, but I think it's essential to get to know both of them.
Is it?
Yeah, I mean, Lucifer is the enlightening one, the bringer of light, gives you all this knowledge, and then Belial teaches you how to utilize that knowledge.
Oh, I see. So they're all, and Shemyaza, they're all watchers.
Possibly. I can't
Inter
say anything definitively. I mean, I don't know any more than the scholars know. I have personal relationships with these entities, and I have opinions. I know the things that they tell me, but it's not anything that I can prove. Um, I think that they're all the same species and all on the same team. All right, they said that when when Shemyaza and Azazel and the rest of the Watchers came to Earth, they said there was 200 of them. All right, but it doesn't mention Lucifer in that story. Okay, so we're talking about like a different troop. We're not talking about like spiritual beings. We're talking about physical beings. We're talking about like actual highly advanced alien beings that came here, and compared to us, they are gods. They are
Mm,
godlike.
mm.
And I think that many of them are still alive. And whenever you evoke them, whenever you summon one of them, you're essentially they're projecting their consciousness to you in order to interact and communicate with you and teach you things. And they also have a powerful influence over our reality, or give you the power to influence your own reality in a way of your choosing.
Hmm. Does it feel if somebody else says working with Belial and they know you, such as your friend with the red hair, does it make you feel a bit possessive? Do you think actually that's my entity, you go and get your own or something like that?
No, absolutely not. Not at all.
All right. I think I might be a little bit like that if I had a really intense experience like you did, because I suppose then you become like family, don't you, in some kind of way? Or maybe
Yeah,
people
absolutely.
around you, they also join
Uh,
that family,
yeah,
perhaps.
the last thing they want is for you to become possessive over them. Possession is the opposite of love. And that ultimately comes down to love. I mean, that's what these entities have for you. And the more that you embrace them and open yourself up to them, the more that you want to see other people do so, because it has bettered your life. And it's not one person, it's not one magician that's going to make the world a better place. It's
Mm.
it's everyone collectively getting on the same page that is going to make the world a better place. And I truly believe that's what these entities want to see. They want to see the human race evolve to a point where we are worthy of breathing oxygen. All right. And I think that that's why we get destroyed every so often. Like it's like a failed experiment. Like, okay, this test group didn't make it. Look what they've done to the planet. All right, wipe them all off the board, upgrade their DNA or downgrade their DNA, and see if we can see if they get it right the next time. And so yeah, I definitely think that there's two forces there. There's a force that wants to keep us enslaved and controlled, and there's another force that wants to see us take our place in the galaxy as a worthy race of civilization. Like I mean, I think most people would agree. Like looking at the world right now and all the crap going on, we're kind of a worthless species
Mm.
collectively at this point. Like we don't really deserve to live when you consider that all we do is destroy the planet and enslave and murder each other.
Mm.
Like there are good people, there are a lot of good people, but they are being controlled and influenced and dominated by evil people. All right. And so we've got to get our shit together as a species and stop killing each other, stop enslaving each other, stop destroying the planet, and learn how to coexist and thrive and prosper and become better. Like we should be conquering the galaxy right now. When I say conquering, I don't mean like going around enslaving other planets. I'm saying we should be exploring the universe and seeing just how far we can make it as an evolved species. But we can't even get along with our neighbors. So it's pathetic.
It's true. It's absolutely excellent. Yeah. Well, it's been a great show with you tonight. It's been excellent, and I'm sure everybody will agree. It'd be
Yeah, I had a
great
blast.
to read a book about your journey with Belial, and that would be really interesting. Did you write one?
I'm actually writing one. I've published a few things through Become a Living God. Like, I've got a publication in the Anthology of Sorcery, Volume 3. That's the Rite of Deification. I've got a publication in the Book of Azazel and a publication in the Compendium of Satan that details the reverse baptism that I created. It's like a how-to manual. But as far as like a book solely written by me, that's my story and my experiences, that's something I'll be writing for the next 20 years, probably. I'll probably have to publish more than one. Um, and by the time I'm done writing this, I'm sure I'll have a whole nother book worth of writing to do. So it's going to be, something that I leave behind for those that, find value in the work that I've done and want to pick up the sword where I left off, because we don't live forever.
Exactly, yeah. I just think what you shared tonight, that would be a great book. I could see it as a movie. It would be, fascinating for people to follow.
Yeah, yeah, that would definitely be an interesting movie. Although I'm sure they would cheese it up if it did make one about it. But I'm gonna get it right in the book. We'll see what comes after that.
Yeah, you should. It would be really interesting. People are fascinated by it. And it was a really amazing story. I really found it interesting, the whole thing. I was really following
Thank you.
that. Brilliant. Well,
Thank
thank you for sharing it. It was amazing and brilliant. I hope you come back soon and always interesting to have you as a guest. You're always fascinating.
you. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's always a pleasure to come on and. You guys check me out at lawlessmetaphysics.com if you want to see the type of stuff that I offer. And yeah, we'll do this anytime you want. I had a blast. Thank you.
Oh, brilliant. Well, thank you very much, JS, and thank you everybody for listening, and see you all next week. Thank you, JS, and God bless.
Thank you. God
Thank
bless.
you.